Oh, my son is in Florida. He's gonna get back on it.
Just gonna get the sheets and then we're gonna start.
Oh, 60-mile-an-hour winds, so I'm promising. Yeah,
How are yours?
to change the weather, go to the.
Well, the website that I go to is the amount of rain per hour. Well, it makes a difference to me.
The wind is the problem. 60-mile-an-hour winds, 50 up here.
So whether or not the stream flood,
Oh, by your house, you mean?
right?
Yeah, it's even said, but now they have this big seawall after Sandy at the beach area. It's 2.5 feet above sea level. The wave is going to come over. I mean, they're 14 to 16 foot waves, but they're only 2.5 feet above.
Are you worried about Long Beach?
No, because now they have a big seawall. You know, so
You're concerned about the storm, right?
And we'll display the flood preparations.
3 to 4 inches makes it that 3 to 4 inches is enough.
Oh, yeah,
Yeah, do it.
yeah, it depends on how quickly it comes. It probably won't be an issue because it's like 2.5 inches of rain over 12 hours.
So what about that 8-inch though? The one that was a little while back, it was 8 inches of.
Oh, no, that, the screen went over.
Yeah.
The flood, the preparation to all works.
So from what I saw on the map, Long Island's getting it bad, but we probably not getting it. Or
50-mile-an-hour winds still.
We getting 50?
Yeah,
Because
they're getting
54?
60. They're getting 60.
So, I mean,
No, the building after Sandy also made all these, they have like these submarine doors that get screwed in to block all the doors and,
Yeah.
but now the boardwalk is, sealed at the bottom. There's no getting under it.
Oh, it's sealed.
Yeah, because the boardwalk was lifted up from
Right.
below. It wasn't like swept from forward. It was lifted from below. So now they sealed the front of it.
the traditional like
Yeah.
0.3 inches of rain an hour for a few hours.
There's no,
Like twice 1.5.
Oh, middle of the night.
along the boardwalk, there's no longer a wire apron because they sealed the bottom. So it's now a solid wall. It's considered a solid wall.
It's good.
Yeah.
So you working remotely tomorrow?
I'm always working.
So the reason is about it.
I don't work till Tuesday, so I don't care either.
You're okay, yeah.
I mean, I usually manage to get. I even got in when everything was flooded and you had to go down, Columbus Avenue and stuff. You couldn't go on any, and the Waze is useless then. It didn't know that everything was shut.
All right. Seems like copies have disappeared, so you got an actual copy today. Actually, if you want, you should use this one. This is the Jules. Perfect. Okay. Make new copies for next week. They seem to have disappeared. Okay. You're not here. I looked, yeah. I don't know. Sure what happened. Thought I put them away. Okay.
You put the marker in?
For you. We are continuing with Reish Samach Gimel. We were in the middle of Sif Yud. Last week we talked about whether or not when a person lights the Shabbos candles, that is the way in which Shabbos now begins for that person, or no, does that have, there was an opinion that candlelighting has nothing to do with it, and it actually relates to Baruch Hu. When the shul says Baruch Hu on Friday night, and then there was an opinion that it does relate to candlelighting, but at the end of the day, you could always make a stipulation tonight that you're not accepting Shabbos when you light candles. So, what we see here in the Ramah, let's read the Ramah one more time. That's where we kind of left off last time. It's the bottom of the top part of where it's page Lamed Zion. The Ramah says, "V'haminag she'osa isha hamadlekes mekabeles Shabbos bahadlaka im lo shetasne tchila." That the practice, what do we have all these opinions? What is the custom, at least for Ashkenazim, is that the woman lights and accepts Shabbos with the hadlaka, with the candle lighting. If she does not stipulate first that she's not accepting Shabbos, vafilu t'nai b'leiv sagi, and even a stipulation in one's heart doesn't mean it doesn't need to be verbalized. It could just be thoughts in our head. Should be sufficient to allow you to then continue to do malacha after lighting candles. Aval shar b'nei habayit mutarin b'malacha ad baruch. But the rest of the people in the house don't get schlepped along for the ride. They presumably will be going to shul, or even if they're not going to shul, they accept Shabbos when the Kehila accepts Shabbos with davening, with Baruch Hu, or again, Mizmor Sheli on Shabbos for us in our day. So we'll get to this in a little bit today, actually. If the Kehila, let's say, is doing a 7 o'clock Shabbos, by the time, let's say, they get to, accepting Shabbos, Mizmor Sheli on Shabbos, let's say it's 7:25. So that, and even though someone lit candles before in the household, and the rest of the people, let's say, didn't even go to shul in the house, or some people did, some people didn't. Everyone else is subject to Shabbos when they get to Mizmor Sheli on Shabbos. Now we're gonna get to the I don't know if it's even a controversial topic, but we'll get to the topic of wait, when the shul says Baruch Hu or Mizmor Sheli on Shabbos, does that affect everyone else in the Kehila, in the town? So we're gonna have to play that out, because that has major ramifications for Shabbos in our very community, where there is kimat only one time that people daven, even if there are multiple minyanim around the neighborhood. No, in the summertime, I'm particularly thinking about. It's not to say that people are davening at Zman at 8:15 in the summer. People generally are davening around 7. I hear that one of the local minyanim is 7:15. Whatever it is, at a certain point, all the minyanim have accepted Shabbos, and the sun is still, above the horizon. So we're going to get to that today. How do we deal with that? So, all right. I think in terms of Mishnah Berurah comments, we are good. We're still holding. So let's keep going. We're turning the page down the Ramah. It's continuing the Ramah. The Ikar Hadlaka. Good morning, Simeon. See you there. The Ikar Hadlaka. Teluya baneiros shemadlikin al hashulchan. So I guess, Simeon, I didn't see it come in there, but we're at the top of page, in my edition it says 74. It's Reish Samach Gimel towards the end of Sif Yud. We're in the Ramah. For me, it's at the top of the next page.
Okay.
Ve'ikar hadlaka, the lighting, that is the essential lighting, Teluya baneiros shemadlikin al hashulchan, are dependent upon the candles that are placed on the table. Here we're talking about the dining room table, where you're going to eat your Shabbos meal. It's not dependent upon other candles in the house. Okay, I mean, this is nothing new. We've already introduced this concept before, that the candles which you make the bracha on, the candles which really are especially if you're accepting Shabbos with those candles, that should be those last candles that you light. You should leave. You need to leave. You place the candles in the place where you light them. I think, well, what meshuggah thing is this? What are you gonna? Okay, hold on. Below the hadlik b'makom, you shouldn't light it in one place. Ulahaniach b'makom acher, and then place it down in another spot. Now, to us, I'm going to assume around the table. That sounds like a very foreign concept. What do you mean you're going to light the candles and move them? But in a time where most of their lights in their homes were from candles, you probably were more accustomed to moving your candles around. I need light here, I need light there, and you would move them around.
Excuse me, Rob, wouldn't you make the argument that once the candles are lit and she hasn't made them tluyim, any tolui, she's accepted Shabbos, that the
Yeah.
candles are now muktzah, how does she move them?
Should make the bracha.
So the assumption, so in assumption here, perhaps underlying it, actually, take a look. Oh, see, Simeon, I remember I was like, I think someone addressed this. Take a look at the Mishnah Brewer. He answers your question. Mem Zayin. Okay. V'tzorich. We'll go back to Mem Hey and Mem Vav in a second. V'tzorich v'chule. Mem Zayin. Mishnah Brewer. Sifkat Mem Zayin. Hainu. Afilu im yasnet beferush she'eno mekabel Shabbos ad shiyu haneros al mikoman. The assumption here is she made a stipulation, even if she made a stipulation explicitly, that she is not accepting Shabbos until the candles are placed in their, wherever you have them in mind. I'm lighting them in the den, and then I'm not accepting Shabbos until I put the candles in the dining room. Now you'll ask me, why in the world are you lighting it in the den in the first place? Well, that's because they might not have had a tremendous amount of light, and so I need a little light here, and then I'll move it to the, you know,
Lit from the fireplace.
maybe they lit from the fireplace, made the bracha on the fireplace, and they transferred the flame. Interesting. I never heard that one.
But that was their starter.
That was maybe the starter. They had to start somewhere.
Wherever was the kitchen.
It's a good point, by the way. So Bruce is making the point. What if you already had a flame going, a fire? Right now, today, you take a matchbox and you go, I don't know that it was always, I don't know when matchboxes became a thing. That you had a place to strike. Right? So if you had a fire already going, you might actually light it in another room where there's a fire. And then you might walk the candles to the other part of the house. So you...
But this tanai that she makes can only be made when either the community or the individuals are working on an early Shabbos. But if it is already dark, if it is already after the 18 minutes,
No.
then she can't touch them.
Correct. Yes, this whole case is all prior to, we'll use the shkia here for a cutoff. It is prior to sunset, because otherwise she has no legal authority to move the candles around at all, for various reasons.
And she couldn't use the 18 minutes for that basis anyway.
Ideally. Ideally. Very important word, by the way, for basically 90% of women in Klal Yisrael. Ideally. Okay, let's go back to Mem Hey and Mem Vav now. Mem Hey, the Ikar Hadlaka. Hainu divarech aleihen velo al shar nehaneros. As I've said, and we've said many times, the essential lighting is where you make the bracha on the candles, and not on the other candles that are on your house. Again, today, I don't think any of us are lighting candles in other rooms. We have, artificial lighting that illuminates our home. But at least in the days when they use candles everywhere, the candles that you made the bracha on, the last candles that you lit, were the ones by the dinner table. Because the essential mitzvah, ideally, is that you light the candles in the place where you are eating, so that they have light there. And that's fitting to do the bracha on those candles that give light on the dining room table. And even just as I mentioned a number of weeks ago, one candle is enough. The bracha even alludes to this. Lahadlik ner shel Shabbos. It's not lahadlik neros shel Shabbos. One candle. By the way, if you were paying attention carefully on Hanukkah, same thing. The Ikar mitzvah, the essential mitzvah of Ner Ishu Beso, is one candle. How is the bracha formulated? Every night, even when you're lighting multiple candles, lahadlik ner shel Hanukkah. It's not lahadlik neros.
Singular.
That's right, because you can light one candle on any night of Hanukkah, and that would technically be sufficient. Okay, continuing here on the Mishnah Berurah. Mihu im yesh harbe noshim ve'ein lechol achas shulchan b'fnei atzma. What if there are many women in one particular space? You have a few families that are together for Shabbos. Yechola levarech al haneros she'omdi b'bayis b'shar mekomos. She is, if she would like, able to light in other places of the home. Kegon al haneros shedolkin al hamenorah tatuluya be'emsa habayis. It could be on the candelabra. Here I'm almost envisioning an overhead light that was probably lit, like a menorah, almost like what's above us here. A hanging light. You have a candelabra that's just standing in it, or it could be on the ground. I don't know why I'm imagining it's hanging from the ceiling. That is standing in the middle of the house. Kigon al haneros shedokin al menorah hataluya. It's hanging. Sorry. I see. That's why I was assuming that. Be'emsa habayis v'chi hagavna, or like anything. That's just an example. The chlala naktinan. Here's the principle. The v'chol makom shemadlik, anywhere where you light. In order to do any make any usage of that place. Ika mishum shalom bayis. That is providing shalom bayis. You could see where you are. You could see what's going on. Viroi levarech, and therefore it is now fitting to make a bracha. So again, ideally in the dining room where you're going to eat. If there are multiple people who are lighting, people can light in other places as long as those places will be used by people on Friday night. So if there's a den where people will sit after the meal is over and they're going to schmooze and enjoy each other's company, that is okay as well. If there are multiple people, the second woman can light over in that space. We also did mention though previously that if a woman, the second woman and the third woman lit in the same spot as the first woman, it would technically be okay as well because it's a mosif simcha, it's mosif, or it adds to the light and to the ambiance of Shabbos. So we did mention that that's okay. And if I'm not mistaken, just from my own observations in life, that seems to be more what people do as opposed to lighting one set of candles over here and then the daughter-in-law lights over here and then this one lights over here. Everyone usually lights in one general area. Okay. Mem Vav. Hanero Shivabayis. Hainu Baal Habayis. Over here we're talking about that you need to place it where you light it. Here we're talking about the Baal Habayis. Right, the homeowner, right? She or he lights the candles where the eating is. Great. They're able to make the bracha on the table and make the light them and make the bracha there. Aval be'oreach. When we have a guest, as we've talked about before, im yesh lo cheder meyuchad ha'atzmo. If there's a guest and they have their own space, which no one else is going to go into, and even if they're not eating in that space, madlik sham ner mevarech alav, they can light there and make a bracha on it. As we talked about extensively in Sivav, we also talked about there. What if the fellow is a married man and his wife is lighting at home, so he has an obligation to light in his room, but he doesn't know, not for the bracha. Remember, because there seems to be two tracks here of lighting. Number one is that there should be light in your room where you are spending Shabbos, so you don't trip over things. And there's also like your family should have some Shabbos lights. If your family already has Shabbos lights, your wife is lighting somewhere else in a different home, and she lit with a bracha, you still need to light where you are, but you might not need to say a bracha because in that sense, the family has had a lighting, even if it was someone else, but you do have an obligation to take care of your own space.
Does that apply today?
If someone goes away for Shabbos?
I mean,
Well, you can't light a candle, let's say, in a hotel.
Hotel, yeah, if you're in a hotel, so you.
Go and like making open a light.
if a man goes by himself,
Yeah.
does it still apply that today? That because he has got a light in the room. Does he still have to light a candle?
So I think that as long as he puts some sort of light on, I think that's sufficient. There's no bracha that's necessary. So I would think that you should definitely make a point of, in your mind, and you verbalize it that you're turning on the lights, whatever, the kavod Shabbos. Ideally, that's what everyone should do every week before we turn on lights that we're going to leave on for Shabbos, even though they're not really flames today. Like it's not. When you turn an LED light bulb on, it's not exactly fire.
But you set the Shabbos lamps up, that's the.
Oh, sure. That you probably don't even need to say it because it's called the Shabbos lamp. It's Megala Das. That's for Shabbos. But no. But I think if there's if in the room, like let's say a person is staying somewhere and they're leaving a Shabbos lamp on, you turn it on. You have in mind. Probably don't even need to have in mind because of course you're turning it on for Shabbos. But there's no need for making a bracha. Now, if let's say there is no wife in the picture and no one's lighting at home or something like that, or we're talking about the case of the bachur. Right, they're talking about the yeshiva bachur or the college student who is not married and they are no longer really living at home anymore. They're really not. They're not connected in that way. Yes, they come home 10 days a year to be with to stay at the house, and of course they call every day. They're good children. They call every day. And they're very connected to their parents, but they're adults now. They don't live. Their ktovet, their address is no longer at home. So then they should, in my opinion, they should light with a bracha. Again, that's what I did when I had an apartment. Actually, I didn't do it. My roommate did it. Somebody in your apartment should light, and they should make a bracha. But if you're married, if someone's married today, I think they're going somewhere else. Certainly, if there's already a baal las habayis in their place, she's lighting, and there's a bracha and everything, and there's a wife at home who's still making. You turn on the Shabbos lamp in your room. You don't make a bracha.
But we don't do it today. Right, but
Yeah.
it would seem that if you go somewhere.
Yeah.
You're wife,
Yes.
say, another family.
Yeah. Yeah. Yeah.
You're staying in a room.
Right.
You could make the wife should light.
Correct.
the room.
It seems to me clear as daylight. So just for your benefit, Simeon, Steve was saying that it would seem from all that we've learned, so far, that if a couple was staying by someone else for Shabbos and they have their own cheder miyuchad, that the wife of the guest family should be able to light in her room and make a bracha there. And the answer is undoubtedly yes. But it's not what people do. She tends to light in the lighting area.
Yeah, Rav, I'm sorry.
Right. It would make more sense to light in her room because it's actually giving off the light in the space instead of just being mosif the light. But it seems that the Jewish women have spoken with their feet, and they are lighting. They're lighting in the designated lighting area. Right. There you go. There you go. Yes, Simeon, what were you saying?
Okay,
Go ahead,
Rav, you have a concept that you set forth many times during the limud.
Yeah.
You have a phrase, minhag Yisrael.
Right.
So I was wondering, in the concept of ish uveso, if the family goes to visit the Klingers Friday night
Yes.
and there's nobody in the house,
Yes.
and Mrs. Klinger lights the candles, aren't I good to go?
So I believe, and here's I think I may have made this point last week a little bit. I don't know if I made it enough though, or maybe I didn't say it at all. So I'm going to say it now. I'm going to go on the record. I believe that if you're eating out on Friday nights, you probably should still light in your home. You should probably, and you're coming back to, you're not sleeping somewhere else. You're sleeping at your house, but you're going to come back. I believe you should light in your home. And if a person is worried, why? Because you need to add shalom bayis to your house. That is something that has to happen every single week. You have to have shalom bayis added to your house. Now, if you're not staying in your house, whatever your house is for that week, you have to add shalom bayis. That's why if you're a guest somewhere else, you light there. But you're sleeping over. But if you're going back home afterwards, I think you should, and that you should try to have the candles be able to last long enough till you get home. Or the Eitzah Tova, if you're worried about fire, so you light a little tea light and it's not going to last very long, is that when you turn on the other lights, right before you light the tea lights, you have in mind that when you actually light the Shabbos candles, I have in mind also as you do every week, all the lights in our house, right? That's adding to the Kavod Shabbos, Lahadlik Ner Shel Shabbos. Yes, these ones, but also all the others. And therefore, when you return home, you do have some Shabbos lights that are still in existence, and therefore it's not a bracha levatala that you made. Ideally, also, I would also recommend that before one leaves, especially if the woman already accepted Shabbos with the candle lighting, she should look at the candles, derive some hana from it, the beauty of it, so that it's not a bracha levatala. But ideally, it's really about lighting at home, so there is shalom, an increase in shalom bias in the place where we are, which is our bias. I know that flies in the face of we even do here in the shul what I just said, where we'll put candles out on a Friday night meal like we had a few weeks ago, where people will light here. I am not here to disparage that minhag. I understand that hasn't happened just here. So many places that it would make eminently more sense to me that one lights with a bracha at home, even if they're going to eat out. So then you make the bracha. Obviously, you're not accepting Shabbos, and then that's why I said before, you'll turn on some other light that's going to last all Shabbos, because the electric lights last, and you could find a little incandescent light bulb even. By the way, and that might be a time when you put a night light in your room, and then there's a little bit of light there, so that husband and wife, when they get back to their room, they have they can see where they're walking. And you have that in mind as well, like I'm thinking about that light when I'm also lighting the other candles. So
with the bracha, you haven't accepted. You can make it that you haven't accepted Shabbos.
Correct. Oh yes, that's clear. Yes, but that's not. Yes, yeah, 100%. Okay,
So
I'm on the record. I said it. I said my piece, but I also acknowledge that there are people who do otherwise. Yes, Simeon.
It would seem to me that Nero Shabbos have the element of shalom bayis, but Nero's Hanukkah does not, and it's an issue of pirsume.
Right.
And the halacha, as we learned previously, is ish uveso.
Right.
And if the entire family is not there, whether he's traveling and the rest of the family goes somewhere or whatever, but nobody's in the house, there's no inyan of persume. And if they go to the clingers and the clingers light a Hanukkah menorah, then could I not make the case that I have fulfilled my obligation to be part of that lighting, and that's it? I don't have
Well, just to clarify one thing, is that family that's coming over to my house, are they sleeping by me, or are they going back home after the meal on Friday night?
Going back home.
So again, here near Ishu Beso, they're not part of Beso. They're my orchim for Friday night meal, but they're not part of my bias. In which case, there's a problem, because if they want the lighting to count, well, it has to be in their bias, and so that's why I'll tell you one of the reasons that we didn't do a big Friday night. Apparently, I think it happened in the past. My Orson told me that. I think it was before my time here. That on Hanukkah, they used to have a dinner or something like that on Friday night here sometimes with a guest speaker. It actually complicates things tremendously, because you really need to light the Chanukiah in your own home. You don't have to be there, by the way. You can light the candles and leave,
Right.
and put them by the window and let the people passing by on the street see. You don't need to actually see there, because exactly what you said, Simeon. It's not a bracha levatala. I can light them and leave. Now, I might not want to do that because I don't like leaving a fire, but that's the story. But I don't have to be there, because it's not about shalom bayis. It's actually about pirsume nisa. So I lit it. I saw my candles. I walk away, and all the people who walk by, drive by, the street, are going to see the candles, when they pass by my window, and that's certainly sufficient. It's not about shalom bayis. So they should light before they come over to my house on Friday night for dinner. If they want to come a little later because they want their candles, they want to see that their candles are nice and settled before they come over, that's also fine. They can come a little late. It's early in the winter anyways. Okay.
Well, like if we were at a wedding.
Yes. Yes. That was Hanukkah. Yes.
Right. And so they lit.
Before
the. But on the other hand, if you lit before you got there, you'd be lighting very early.
Too early, right? So by the way, when they light at a wedding, actually, fun story. Take 30 seconds. My first time ever entering this building here in the Young Israel Scarsdale was on Hanukkah, on a Sunday of Hanukkah in 2014. I was not employed here. I had actually applied for the job. I had not had an interview yet. And one of Eliza's very good friends and roommates was getting married, and they happened to have chosen, they're not from here, they happened to have chosen this venue here for the wedding. Interesting, because it's not a popular wedding venue. Okay, but they chose this place to get married, so I came in here, have a Hanukkah. I peeked my head into the shul. They were lighting Hanukkah candles, they've been Chamarv. And then later on, towards the end of the wedding, they lit Hanukkah candles here. It's when you light at a wedding on Hanukkah, it's really like almost like lighting in a shul. Nobody fulfills a personal mitzvah. It is the idea of simply fulfilling Persumei Nisa. You have a large gathering of people. You see it all the time, right? Every Chabad in every city makes that giant menorah. They get the mayor or whatever the town is to come, and they're there by the big. Yeah, they light. And when you do it in a shul or like in a venue like this at a wedding here, so it makes sense. You light, you make a bracha with it. Persumei Nisa, and they lit the candles. And everyone goes clap, and it's light the candles, Maos Sur, and then back to dinner. Yeah, and there's something nice, there's something sweet to that. It's not, nobody fulfills a personal obligation doing that though. That's important. The personal, I always, I wasn't, whatever, because now I'm like mincha in school, whatever, and sometimes it's hard for me to get here. But between mincha and marv, when we light here, in the past I've always told the person, I'll remind them, you need to go home and light again. This doesn't count. Whoever we designate, you have to go back and light again. This does not fulfill your personal obligation for Hanukkah.
So
Okay.
if no one's passing by when you get home.
What if no one's passing by when you go home because you're a doctor who was up until that's a whole shiloh. There's a whole Torah about that question. What if no one is up anymore? It's a whole Torah. And some people say you should wake your spouse up, wake somebody else up in the house to come look at your candles for a minute, to go back. If you're lighting it, 12 o'clock at night, and it's not exactly New York City where you can guarantee that there's always somebody passing by on the street.
Well, here in the suburbs, people are not walking at night around.
Right, but at least if they're driving, there's enough people who are still awake. Unfortunately, we're such a society. There's enough. Unfortunately, I'm still awake usually. So call me. I'll come by. I'll drive by your house. And,
Your wife will love it.
Yeah.
Yeah. Rav, you're gonna wake up my wife to come look at the candles for 30 seconds. Man, you're gonna be in trouble.
Speaking of Shalom Bayis.
Right, it's for Persumei Nisa.
If there's so many Nisa, it's not for Shalom Bayis, Simeon. It's Shalom Bayis. Yeah, okay. Okay. Let's take a look here at the Shulchan Aruch. Sif Yud Aleph. Oh, did we do it? No. Oh, sorry. Mem Ches. I'm sorry. Mem Ches. Velo v'chule. This is talking about that you're not supposed to light it in one spot and place it in another. Mishnah Berurah writes, "Hainu she'osu lahadlik b'makom she'ein mishtamshim bo, u'lahaniach haner b'makom she'mishtamshim bo." It's prohibited to light in a place that you are not going to be using on Friday nights, in a part of the house that will not be used, and then moving the candles before Shabbos and placing them in a place that will be used. Mishum. Now here is a crossover between Hilchot Shabbat and Hilchot Hanukkah. Mishum b'kaim alon hadlaka osa mitzvah. This is a term that's more often used when it comes to Hilchos Hanukkah than Hilchos Shabbos, but here you go. You get your Hilchos Shabbos reference with this phrase. What does Hadlaka Osa Mitzvah mean? That the lighting does the mitzvah. There's a question in Hilchos Hanukkah: Hadlaka Osa Mitzvah or Hanacha Osa Mitzvah? Is the mitzvah the lighting, or the mitzvah the placing of the candles in a particular spot? What's the nafkamina? What's the difference? You light them in a place where let's say you light them in a place where there's no expectation that the lights should go out. It's not near a vent, not near whatever. It's a good spot. It's a good spot. And I light the candles, and then your child, your grandchild runs by the candles, and the lights are out. Or better yet, your 3-year-old thinks it's a fun competition to see how many candles they can blow out in one breath. So without you knowing, they come by and they go and try to blow out all the candles. And then you realize, what are you doing? And they actually successfully blow the candles out. Now the question is, did I do my mitzvah? They didn't last the 30 minutes. They were supposed to last. And so the answer is that kovsa ain't a zakukla, right? It's okay, whatever. As long as I lit them in a spot that they should last and there's no problem. So whatever. Who cares? If it goes out, it goes out. Life happens, but I did the mitzvah the moment I lit the candles. When I lit them in a place that it's all good, I'm done. If it doesn't last 30 minutes, fine. I put it in a situation where the anticipation was, and in all likelihood, it was going to last the requisite amount of time. If something goes wrong with the oil, sometimes the oil in a particular, you put the oil in and it catches, and then for some reason it kind of flames out. Something with the wick, something you would never have expected it. You still should be okay. Now, so we have here hadlaka osa mitzvah. What does this mean? That the moment I light, I fulfill the mitzvah. So if I light the candles in a part of the house that's not going to be used, and then I move them somewhere else, well, I just fulfill my mitzvah in an area of the house that is not being utilized. Therefore, it's now a bracha levatala. I'm not using that place on Friday night. I'm just lighting it. Then I'm going to pick the candles up and go somewhere else. Now, there's going to be a Talmud Chacham around the table who will say, oh, but you lit them, and so therefore you were benefiting from them immediately at the lighting. I don't think that that's sufficient argument in terms of, like, to use a tennis metaphor here. I don't think that's a good volley back, because those moments, there's still some light coming in from the outside. So it's not even clear that you're utilizing the lights in that place. And here we're talking about utilizing it on Shabbos. So even when I said before, you're going to leave on Friday night, you're going to go out, you should try to stay for a little bit until it's Shabbos. I know obviously the women accept Shabbos immediately. And here's third, she didn't accept Shabbos. That's why she's moving the candles. She didn't accept Shabbos. She accepted Shabbos. She's in trouble. She can't move the candles. So I don't think it's sufficient to say, well, she used the lights those first few moments when she lit it. Take a look here. Let's continue what he says here.
Excuse me, Rav. How could the Mishnah Berurah possibly say hadlaka osa mitzvah when the essence of the mitzvah is not the hadlaka but a shalom bayis?
But when do you fulfill that mitzvah of candlelighting, which its purpose is for shalom bayis? When Hashem has a ledger in Shamayim, this is how I always explain it to my talmidim. I don't think actually this is how Hashem works, but I profess no knowledge of this. But the way I envision it and teach it is that if there's a ledger and it says, Simeon Fensterheim, Simeon and Diane Fensterheim, and there are a bunch of check boxes for each day. On Friday, there's an open box for Hadlakas Neros, the mitzvah of Hadlakas Neros. And Hashem wants to put a big check mark there for the Fensterheim family. When does Hashem put a check mark there? When does the check mark get made? And according to this approach, the hadlaka, at the moment of the hadlaka, Hashem goes, the Fensterheims put themselves in a position to have increased shalom bayis. Check. Good job. Then suddenly what happens? The Fensterheims were having guests over, and one of the guests was very clumsy and bumped right into the candles, knocked them over, the lights went out. Doesn't matter. The Fensterheim's already got a check mark. Doesn't matter. That's what hadlaka osa mitzvah is. Yes, the point is to increase shalom bayis. But when do I get my check mark for having done that? I get that check mark when I light it, and even if something were to go wrong and the shalom bayis doesn't come to fruition, I did my job. Or the Fensterheims did their job. That's how Hashem looks at that. That's what a hadlaka osa mitzvah means. So,
All right. No.
So the kevan shehidlik b'makom she'ein mishtamsh bo, since this family lit in a place where they were not going to use the area, she'eino makom chiyuva, it's not a place where you were obligated to light some candles. Lo mahani hadlaka, so klum, the candle lighting didn't help at all. Even 2 seconds later, 5 seconds later, I'm picking it up and moving it to a place where there is an obligation to have lights. If that's what you do, you have to extinguish the flames and relight them and relight them.
With a bracha?
Yes, 100%. Even if you said the bracha before, the bracha was a bracha levatala. There was nothing. There was no connection at all to the mitzvah. I believe you have to light it with the bracha
You're reinforcing the notion of shalom bayis and not hadlaka.
by saying it to make the bracha again.
I don't know.
No. Let me explain. Because the bracha has to be connected to a situation where I'm adding shalom bayis. But if I lit in a place that's not going to be utilized on Friday night, I mean, there's a room. I'm just for the sake of being ridiculous, I'm going to say the following: you light candles in your attic, and you never go to your attic, but whatever. For some reason, you lit in your attic, and you made the bracha there. Then you take the candles and you go down to the dining room and you put them down in the dining room. You made the bracha and you lit the candles in a spot where there was no obligation to light. And even if you said the bracha, well, I'm sorry, but that candle lighting, the hadlaka, was done where there was no shalom bayis necessary. No one was going to go to the attic on Friday night. So then when I come down and I place it down there, well, that's very nice. But when I do the mitzvah, the action of the mitzvah is the hadlaka. By the way, what's the raya? The bracha itself. What is the Asher Kedushan Sivanu? Lehadlik ner shel Chanukah. Same thing when you pick up the lulav and esrog. Why do we pick it up with the esrog upside down for our Ashkenazim? Because if you pick it up, al natilas lulav, just the holding of the lulav and esrog is the mitzvah. That's how we make the bracha with the pitom in the wrong direction, so that way you don't do the mitzvah yet. Because the moment that's the moment of the mitzvah. The moment of the mitzvah of candle lighting is the lighting of it. So if I light in a completely the space that's not going to be used on Friday night, then it's the lighting was the levatala, the lighting was for no reason, and the bracha that was said with it was a bracha levatala, and I have to extinguish the flame, go to a place where I'm actually going to use that's going to be used on Shabbos. Then I have to light, and I have to light with a bracha because I didn't do the mitzvah yet. Anytime I don't do the mitzvah, like if you make a bracha on I'm trying to think of other mitzvah that we make. Let's use this example. I light the Hanukkah candles too early. I get confused what time it is. I light the Hanukkah candles too early, and I make the bracha. The Hadlik Ner Shel Hanukkah, and it was really way too early. When I light the candles later, I have to make a bracha again because I didn't really do anything the first time, and I made a bracha levatala, and I should say Baruch Shem Kavod Malchut Olam V'Hed. I should, try to be more careful next time, but I didn't do anything, so you have to make a new bracha. I firmly believe that.
It's a perfect reason for adding the second candle.
There you go. Good reason to
Like
add the second candle.
transfer it and light them. The second one when you get to we.
There you go.
Yeah, ask Bruce if he lights his lulav.
You like lulav? Oh, he said only on Erev Pesach. Ooh, he got you there. Erev Pesach. That's right. It's a good time to light your lulav. Now he says here, let's say you do light the candles in the den where people will sit on Shabbos. And then you want to actually move it to the dining room. Then it's fine, perfectly fine. Move it to the dining room before Shabbos, obviously. Move it. You don't need to make a bracha again. It was good because you lit it in a place which was going to be used. Therefore, it's no bracha levatala. It was a good lighting. And he says here, all the parts of the house that are going to be used are the makom for lighting. Okay? Now, you want to be super machmir? The levush says, no, you have to light it. You have to light it where you have to place it. You have to leave it, you have to leave it where you light it. Meaning, pick out the spot first, make sure it's the right spot, and then light. There's no lighting in one spot, which, by the way, Bruce's example, actually, I didn't come to my mind when I was preparing last night and before. If you're using a fireplace to transfer the fire, you could think about lighting the candles right there and making the bracha right there, and then you'll walk the candlesticks to the spot where you want to place them. No, better yet, take a match or take a stick, a twig. You light it from the fireplace. You walk over to the dining room, and then you light in there. That's how you should ideally do it. If you want to be machmir for the levush, you definitely have to do it. But if there's a need, You don't have a match, you don't have a twig, so you go over, you light the candles by the fireplace, then you walk them back over. That's fine.
I would think that the Lavush would want to press the point that the lighter of the candles, let's say the woman of the house, should make a tanai
Yes.
to make sure that she disqualifies the candles as being the trigger mechanism for the start of Shabbos, because then she'd have a muktzah issue in moving them.
Correct.
If I read
Yes.
correctly on this edition.
Yes.
55,
Which one? Number 55?
55,
Right? I'll share theirs. They're on this in Kailitz. Shiochel taltalam b'makom l'makom. Yes, go ahead.
Does that mean that one has to be left behind, the rest can be moved? Am I reading that correctly?
Right. Yes. And actually, it's going to relate to what we're about to talk about now. Take a look at this. Let's finish the Mishnah Berurah, and then it's going to relate to the last point here, which I was going to bring in. Perfect. He says here, Mishnah Berurah, Kosav Chai Adam. Chai Adam writes, quote, Hanoshim shemadlikim basukah bechag. Women who light in the sukkah on sukkahs. They light the candles there because that's what they're eating, right? Umetaltalim lesoch habayis. Then they carry it inside the house because it's yontif. So you can move the candles. It's not like Shabbos where you can't move the candles. Lo yofehein osin. He doesn't like it. They're not doing something nice.
You're gonna do
Now-
training and you can eat in the house.
So listen to this. Ready? So this goes to the extra point here. It's 55, which I guess is Rav Nissen Karlitz, who writes. So you guys don't have this unless you have the Dirshu edition. Oh, actually, you do have it, Bruce. You have it there, 55. In the middle, he writes. Okay, goes to your point. You have to leave at least some candles in the where you lit in the dining room. If you light the candles on sukkahs, now you're done eating, but you don't want to leave an open fire in a sukkah. Remember, a sukkah is made out of material. It's usually very easily. You have wind. Things can go wrong in a sukkah much more easily than in your house. You don't want that to happen. When you're done with the meal, you could take them. You want to go inside. You're going to sit around in the den. So you're going to move it. But here's the problem. You need to at least leave one. Why? Because of this concept that where you light the candles needs to be where you leave the candles, or at least one candle. So on Yom Tov, when you can move candles around, okay, go ahead. You can move your candle with you. But you need to at least leave one where you lit, which was in this case, sukkahs, you lit in the sukkah. Now, I don't know anyone here. Anyone here around the table light in the sukkah on sukkahs?
Yes,
No, we don't do that either.
yes,
Did
we
you
do.
You lighted the candles in the sukkah? Okay, the green scenes do.
That's why they not by my kids now, but they do.
Okay. So
We do, Rav.
you also light in the sukkah, Simeon?
We light in the sukkah, and it's also the makom of achila. And even if the weather isn't great, it's the makom of kiddush.
Yeah. So I commend all of you, by the way. I think it probably makes a lot of sense to light in the sukkah. I always am nervous because I have kids, and it's not like when we light in our house, we have this stand which is high up that they can't reach. So I thought when I was a kid, I thought when I was like a parent of little kids, now they can reach them because they find a way to stack chairs on top of each other. And but whatever, leave that aside for now. But in the sukkah, it's like really nerving because like there's not a lot of space, and it would make a lot of sense. But I think for just sakana reasons that we don't do it because just our kids are right there. They're like level, it's eye level with the fire, and not even because they're going to touch it. There's not a lot of room in the sukkah, and they bump into the thing and they fall over, and But it would make a lot of sense to light in the sukkah. So those of you who light in the sukkah on Sukkot, not when it's Shabbos Sukkot, then you can't really move the candles. But when it's Sukkot, if you're going to go back inside, you're done eating in the sukkah, you're going inside the house now, and you're like, I want to take the candles with me. You should at least leave one flame to finish up in the sukkah, so that way you fulfill this mandate that the candles remained where they were lit in the first place. At least one candle.
In fact, Rav, there's a Hasidish minhag to sleep in the sukkah.
Here, I think it's the Yantav candles.
Right.
If it's Shabbos candles, you can't move them anyways.
Right,
Right.
so-
Yeah. Sorry, Simeon. What do you want to say?
I said there's a Hasidish minhag to sleep in the sukkah.
Right, 100%. It's supposed to be your bias. That's why I have nothing but praise for those who light their candles. I think it makes eminently more sense because you're supposed to treat your sukkah like your home on Sukkot. And if that's the case, you should be lighting in your home, which is your sukkah. So I think it makes a tremendous amount of sense. Now, I'm not saying that if a person who does not light, who lights in their kavua house, doesn't, I think it's fine because we use the space. Most of us still use the space on sukkahs, but it's really a hidur mitzvah, I would say, and probably the best way to do the mitzvah is to actually light in your, where you're going to eat and sleep, especially if you're eating and sleeping in the sukkah. It would make a lot of sense. Okay, Yud Aleph in the Shulchan Aruch now. Back up on top. Afal Pishalo. He's now here. We get into some of the weeds of some tough parts of halacha. Afal Pishalo. He's palu hakal adayin. Even though the tzibur hasn't yet davened, and here we're talking about davening Mariv or Mizmor Shir on Friday night. If let's say you on your own decided you want to daven b'yachidus and you daven before the kehila, miba ojom while it's still daylight, you have now accepted Shabbos upon yourself. And you are not allowed to do malacha, even though everyone else in town they're doing malacha still, and perhaps even everyone else in your house is still doing malacha. And you're like, no. I'm a big Talmud Chacham. I learned in Rabbi Klinger's shir that if you make a Tanai, then I don't have to accept Shabbos. Okay, but you got too cute then, because you can't make a Tanai on davening. That doesn't work. You can't daven and say, that although the davening of Shabbos, and make a Tanai that I'm not accepting Shabbos. That doesn't work. That kind of Tanai will blow up in your face. Take a look at Mem, Tes, and Nun in the Mishnah Berurah. So the earliest you can accept Shabbos, as we've said before in a previous shiurim, is plag hamincha. If you would daven before plag hamincha onto yourself, you did garnished in a bad way. Also, you probably made a lot of brachot that were levatala. So all the brachos of the Shmon Esrei, the birchos kriyah, all levatala at that point, because it doesn't count. You have to daven again. Didn't work. But on the other hand, you didn't do any damage to yourself in the sense that if you want to do malacha, you can still do malacha. As we talked about previously, Plag HaMincha being the earliest you could take on Shabbos. Go over there. And Sifkat Anun, after Bahadlaka, Yesh Omen Bahani tonight. And even though when it comes to candlelighting, we say, yes, a Tanai does work. It does work. As we just learned in Sif Yud. But Tefillah Shane, davening is different. Why? Why can't I make it tonight? By the way, at least it's a good shaila. Why? If I'm lighting candles and I say lahalik ner shel Shabbos and then I say it's not Shabbos, why can't I daven the words of Shabbos davening and say it's not Shabbos?
No.
Why should there be such a big difference? So he says here the reason there's a difference is kevish yehizkir ba kedushas Shabbos, because when you daven, you actually mention the sanctity of Shabbos. When you think about the Shmon Esrei of Friday night, the middle bracha is Baruch Atah Hashem Mekadesh HaShabbos. You are talking about how it is the Shabbos is holy, it is sanctified. It's one thing to talk about the candles of Shabbos, and this really furthers the point I made before. It's about lighting it in a place that's going to add Shalom Bayis over Friday night. But it's not about the here and the now. It's about the prep that's going into it. But when you're talking about the sanctity of Shabbos, right? That means it's happening right now. You can't acknowledge the sanctity of Shabbos and then be like, it's not actually so sanctified. Sorry, I'll sanctify it later when it's good for me. That doesn't make any sense. It's a stira almost. You're saying one thing and doing another. As opposed to lahadlik ner shel Shabbos, so the neros for Shabbos, their purpose is to give light for later on. That's its job. Okay, now let's look at Yud Beis and then we'll stop. Yud Beis in the Shulchan Aruch. And I'm going to get myself in the weeds here, but it's fine. We'll do it. Here we go. Im rov hakahal kiblu alehem Shabbos. If the majority of the congregation has accepted Shabbos, hamiut nimshochen acharehem al korcham. The minority is dragged with them against their will, and now it is Shabbos. So, I'm going to use a very easy example here, which did happen in medieval Europe. There were definitely, and probably even more modern, not modern like as in like last 50 or 100 years, but I don't know, maybe even 100 years ago, there were definitely small towns of Jews. There are definitely writings about this. I remember doing some research when I was in grad school for medieval Jewish history. There were towns where sometimes they would pay someone to be number 10 on the Yom Noraim. They would bring someone in to be number 10. And they would also have you can't leave the town. There would be literally there would be rules. You cannot leave the town for Yom Noraim because without you, we don't have a minyan. So let's assume we're a town of 20 people where it's easy. You know everybody. It's not like, you go to Teaneck today or you go to the 5 towns in Mamish, you don't even know everybody. You barely know the people who live on your block. You're in a small town, 20 families. 15 of them decide we're going to daven it to 7 o'clock in the summer. 5 of them are like, look, we work hard. We get home about 6:55. We can't do that. The 5 families who are not ready to really begin Shabbos at 7 o'clock are stuck because the halacha is that if the majority of the kehillah has accepted Shabbos upon themselves, they are against their will, Ba'al Korcham, now in a space called Shabbos. Even though they weren't ready, even though they don't want it to be Shabbos, that is how the halacha works. That the community defined by the majority accept Shabbos. It is now Shabbos in whateversville that I just described with the 20 families.
So the minority at the early minyan, that was okay. They've accepted Shabbos. The majority is still going to be.
Good. So if you have a
Later,
minority,
the
let's say you have a town of 50, and the 15 of them want to daven early Shabbos. They want to do early Shabbos. Okay, that's fine. No problem. Do early Shabbos. But that doesn't affect everybody else. They could do late Shabbos. They could do, the Zman, around the Shkia. That doesn't affect them. That is correct. Take a look.
But that communities do that.
Good. So you're going to be like, wait a minute.
They do have on-time minyan.
How many of us have been to places or been in communities where we know that everybody else, the majority accepted Shabbos already, and we're the minority. I got home late. I got home this. How is that possible? So the goal for next week, the beginning of next week for sure, is going to be to justify what happens today. You go to places, sometimes it's actually hard to determine what the rove is. Or better yet, I'll tell you what happens. Go to a place like Teaneck. There are about 4 or 5 bigger shuls at Teaneck. You have, B'nai Yeshurun, and you have Rinat, and you have what are the bigger shuls? Keter Torah. All the big shuls. And let's say the majority of the Jews in Teaneck in the summertime, if you did a study and you figured out you could do this research. When do you usually accept Shabbos? What made it? And we could by research figure out that in Teaneck, most of the Jews in Teaneck have accepted Shabbos by 7:15. But wait a minute, at B'nai Yeshurun, I haven't looked at their calendar, but I have no idea. I have no doubt in my mind because B'nai Yeshurun is like a minyan factory in Teaneck. On the weeknights they have like minyanim on the half hour. You figure out that majority of Teaneck is 7:15, and B'nai Yeshurun has 8 o'clock minyan on Friday night, the late Shabbos. How can they do such a thing? Is if the majority of Teaneck has done Shabbos, it's over, game over, it's Shabbos. So we're going to justify how that happens. Well, better yet, Closer to home, here in Scarsdale, I told you before, we all daven at 7, mincha, so 7:25, we get to Mizmor Shili on Shabbos. Everybody accepting Shabbos at 7:25 around our community. I'm not so sure that that's what's happening. People are getting a little bit later. They're going to start Shabbos at sort of the Zman, or they're, 8, whatever. So how do we jump?
But what is happening is all of the minyanim in the homes in the area around the young Israel are all asked to begin the tefillah, begin the acceptance of Shabbos at the same time.
That's correct. Approximately, they're davening approximately at the same time. By the time the last minyan gets to Mizmor Shir Yom HaShabbos, it's still light out. But yet, others in the community might not still be doing so. So we'll try to justify that as well. But I want to acknowledge that, particularly with our own community, it's actually quite complicated because there isn't another shul around. What Teaneck has over us, and what the 5 towns, and name your big community that has multiple kehilos, or where Simeon is in Boca. In Boca, the mamish probably minyanim every 10 minutes in Boca. So it's very different in our community, and maybe actually a little more halachically complicated. So we'll talk about that next week. So Tommy's like, oh, what about New Rochelle? We could walk to New Rochelle, right? You could make it over there. They have multiple Friday night minyanim. I don't actually know. I never checked. They have one Bisman and one early. Okay, we tried it one summer here. One summer we tried having a Bisman, and it didn't. We had a minyan, but it was a very small minyan because unless you're living near the shul, you're not really walking 25 minutes on a Friday night. You'll make the sacrifice to daven locally if you want to daven with a minyan. All right, so we'll stop there with that cliffhanger. That way I can keep you coming back for more, and then we'll talk about it next week.
If you're a guest in the community, let's say it's a bar mitzvah.
Right.
And everyone's coming Friday night, and they're coming all over, so they can have their own minyan bar mitzvah people because they're coming at a different hour than 7 o'clock.
Right, so they're davening later.
Right,
davening locally later because of the bar mitzvah family.
Guy who's
so it's
they're all guests.
So it's interesting. So it's a very interesting. It's a very interesting shaila. There's going to be a distinction made in the halacha starim in the poskim, and when this doesn't become such a shaila until we live in these mega communities, right? Because everybody just said, you were all in the same street, in the same part of town. And everybody, generally speaking, they were davening in the same shuls. I'm not saying there weren't multiple shuls in town. There were. You go to Warsaw. There were multiple shuls going back in time. But generally speaking, people didn't daven in such different times. Now it's like this one has davens at 6:45 on Friday night. This one davens at 8:15 on Friday night. By the time that the 8:15 people are leaving shul, the 6:45 people are already sleeping. So, this distinction has become, I'm not saying it didn't exist, it's become more enhanced with these communities where you have multiple minyanim that, one after the other, all Friday nights, again, in these bigger Jewish communities that we have now.
More importantly is the shul you won't go to.
Correct. The shul you won't go to, what time are they davening? Yeah. By the way, because that's actually a very important factor. We're going to talk about that next week. The shul you don't daven in. Does it matter that let's say you usually daven your place like Yerushalayim? Again, every block has a minyan. But in Yerushalayim, it's interesting because there, as a city, they do take on Shabbos at one particular time. It's fascinating, right? They have it 40 minutes before the sound of the siren, and in Mamish it's Shabbos. And I think that if you are a guest in Yerushalayim, you're visiting. None of us are Yerushalmis right now. Well, please God, we'll all be Yerushalmi soon. But you go to Yerushalayim for Shabbos, I don't think you have the right to take on Shabbos, any later than everyone else is doing. If the whole Yerushalayim is doing Shabbos 40 minutes before, you have no right to take on Shabbos later. I think you're forced to, based upon this halacha that we just learned. That's an easy one to me. That's an easy halacha that you have to take on Shabbos, whatever in Yerushalayim does. Okay.